As the fourth year concluded, Jacob stood again at Eagle's Peak, where everything had changed 3 years prior. The valley below glowed with thousands of solar installations, their clean energy powering innovations his ancestors couldn't have imagined. Heritage herds grazed managed pastures, their genetics preserved for future generations. Students and researchers from 6 continents worked alongside local ranchers, learning and teaching simultaneously. But the greatest transformation remained internal. The desperate man who'd married for financial salvation had discovered prosperity beyond wealth, purpose beyond profit, legacy beyond land ownership. Most unexpectedly, love, not romantic love, but something deeper. Profound. Michael, after 15 years, we're terminating your contract, my regional manager said without looking up from her tablet. You have until Friday to wrap up. My name's Michael Torres, 47 years old, and until that Tuesday morning in Charlotte, North Carolina, I was the lead warehouse supervisor at Atlantic Distribution Services, running the largest fulfillment center in the Southeast. For 15 years, I'd been the backbone of our operation, implementing systems that saved millions, training entire teams from scratch, and maintaining perfect inventory accuracy rates through 3 expansions and 4 management overhauls. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. From handwritten manifests to automated sorting systems, I'd overseen it all. When hurricanes hit, I was the one who kept shipments moving. When the automated systems crashed during Black Friday, I coordinated manual operations that preserved our contracts with major retailers. The executives praised my innovation in casual conversations, but never put it in writing or annual reviews. So when Patricia called me into her office with James from corporate already present, my stomach dropped, because I recognized the signs. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically over the past 2 months. Sudden policy changes, mysterious late meetings, and my recommendations being overridden without explanation. I appreciate your service, I said, standing before they could continue. Their rehearsed speech. I'll finish my current projects by Friday. Patricia's eyebrows raised slightly. She'd expected pleading, anger, or demands for explanation. Instead, I walked out calmly, maintaining the professional demeanor that had defined my career. Back at my workstation, I began systematically cataloging my personal belongings. While employees bustled around the massive warehouse floor, news traveled even faster than our express shipping routes. Most of these workers had started under my training program, good people who understood logistics, but had no grasp of the intricate systems I'd developed over the years, or the emergency protocols buried in our operations manual. They didn't know about the redundancy measures I'd built into every major process, or the disaster recovery plans I'd written and updated quarterly. I continued packing methodically, my daughter's drawing from when she was 8, the stress ball from our safety milestone celebration, and the plaque commemorating our zero-incident record that nobody at corporate seemed to remember anymore. Rebecca from driver coordination approached, her face flushed with disbelief. Michael, this is insane. You've saved this company countless times. Who's going to handle the spring rush? Who knows the municipal ordinances for every city we deliver? 2? I shrugged, already knowing the answers would reveal themselves soon enough. She persisted, her voice carrying across the loading docks. You trained every supervisor here. You created our inventory system. Without you, we're flying blind. It's just business, I replied quietly, though we both knew better. Really? She pressed. After everything you've done, they're just tossing you aside? I didn't respond, but her words echoed what others were thinking. As I departed the building, James watched from his rental car, ensuring my immediate exit. What none of them recognized was that I'd become irreplaceable, not through arrogance, but through dedication to documenting every process, creating fail-safes, and maintaining institutional knowledge that existed nowhere else but in my mind. And private files. During those years, I'd cultivated relationships that extended beyond corporate hierarchy. Drivers, suppliers, even competitors occasionally called for advice on handling complex logistics challenges. I'd developed a reputation as someone who solved impossible problems without making waves. In my pickup truck, I sat for a moment staring at the massive complex that had consumed most of my adult life. The security badge clipped to my visor had been valid for 15 consecutive years, a personal record I'd been proud of until an hour ago. I started the engine and headed toward my small house on the edge of town, knowing that Thursday would begin my carefully orchestrated response. I joined Atlantic Distribution when my son Tommy was starting middle school. Now he was completing his engineering degree, following somewhat in my footsteps. The company had evolved from a regional player to a national force, and I'd evolved with it, transforming outdated warehousing practices into streamlined operations that impressed industry analysts. Competitors tried recruiting me multiple times, offering substantially more money, but loyalty meant something to me. My wife, Maria, used to tease that I cared more about inventory accuracy than family dinner schedules. She wasn't completely wrong, but my dedication had provided stability during economic downturns that devastated other families in our blue-collar community. I understood every aspect of our operation, the loading patterns that maximized truck capacity, the routing algorithms that saved on fuel, and the supplier relationships that secured preferential treatment during shortages. The infrastructure I'd built had weathered corporate takeovers, economic recessions, and technological disruptions that upper management barely comprehended. Patricia had been my supervisor for 3 years, rising through administrative ranks with an MBA instead of warehouse experience. She spoke confidently about metrics and synergies, but struggled to understand why certain protocols, which seemed inefficient on paper, were essential for real-world operations. Initially, I attempted explaining our complex systems, the legacy, processes that still worked better than newer alternatives, but she preferred consultants' PowerPoint presentations over practical experience. 6 months earlier, she'd hired Gregory Martinez, a supply chain optimization specialist from a prestigious firm. His LinkedIn profile boasted about revolutionizing Fortune 500 logistics divisions. They'd spend afternoons in conference rooms, reviewing productivity charts while actual work happened on the warehouse floor. I noticed subtle changes, my recommendations being shelved, younger supervisors getting high-profile assignments, and my access to certain planning systems being mysteriously restricted. 4 months ago, I intercepted an internal memo discussing operational restructuring under new vision leadership. My position was notably absent from proposed organizational charts, though my responsibilities were distributed among 3 separate roles, none paying close to my current compensation. "You're quieter than usual lately," Maria observed one evening, as we sat on our back patio. "Everything okay at work?" I nodded, sipping my usual evening coffee. "Just adjusting to new management strategies. Nothing I haven't navigated before. But these changes felt different. Previously, transformations had enhanced our capabilities. Now they seemed designed to marginalize institutional knowledge. My concerns proved valid when I discovered a company-wide initiative about operational modernization that had deliberately excluded my input. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The document revealed plans for complete digitalization of inventory management, outsourcing driver management to a third-party company, and elimination of certain quality control measures I'd implemented. My experience was being systematically erased from company planning. That same week, while conducting my usual weekend systems audit, a practice I maintained voluntarily to ensure data integrity, I noticed algorithmic irregularities in our shipping cost calculations. Regular overcharges appeared on certain routes, small but consistent, funneling into an account labeled Operational Optimization Reserve. The discrepancies were subtle, buried in legitimate shipping fees, but followed patterns suggesting deliberate manipulation rather than system errors. A deeper investigation revealed connections to Meridian Logistics LLC, a consulting firm registered recently with an address matching Gregory's prior workplace. I didn't raise alarms or confront anyone directly. Experience had taught me that the person who notices everything while appearing to notice nothing holds unique advantages. I documented every irregularity, made secure copies of all evidence, and continued my duties as if unaware of the developing situation. The morning after my termination, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at spreadsheets that told a sobering story. No alarm had woken me for the first time in decades. No route planning awaited. No inventory audits demanded attention. Just silence and the weight of betrayal. Maria placed breakfast before me without her usual morning chatter. After 20 years of marriage, she understood when words weren't necessary. "I'll run errands today," she mentioned eventually. "Need anything special from the store?" I shook my head, already formulating plans that would unfold over coming days. After she left, I retrieved a secure USB drive from my home office safe, one of several containing comprehensive backups. Company policy prohibited removing sensitive data, but years ago, when establishing disaster recovery protocols for potential cyber attacks, I'd been explicitly authorized to maintain off-site copies of critical operational information. The authorization had been filed and promptly forgotten by legal as they focused on more pressing concerns. I connected the drive and began reviewing files methodically. Shipping manifests, vendor agreements, financial audits, and most importantly, communications between upper management that revealed the true nature of recent decisions. Buried within these documents was evidence of systematic financial manipulation, extending beyond simple cost overcharging. The Meridian Logistics arrangement involved inflated consulting fees for services that largely duplicated existing internal capabilities. Payment authorizations originated from Patricia's office and were approved by James, now positioned as regional director. The scheme's elegance lay in its complexity. Small, incremental charges across thousands of shipments created substantial revenue streams without triggering automatic fraud detection systems. Cross-referencing corporate filings revealed that Meridian Logistics shared several board members with a subsidiary company owned substantially by Gregory Martinez. The connections formed an intricate web designed to siphon company funds while appearing legitimate to casual audit scrutiny. Over 18 months, they diverted approximately $2 million through these arrangements, money that should have funded warehouse improvements and employee benefits. I leaned back, processing this betrayal's full scope. For 15 years, I'd protected this company's interests, implementing cost-saving measures that probably saved 10 times what they'd stolen. My dismissal hadn't been about efficiency or modernization. It was about removing the one person capable of detecting their scheme. My phone vibrated with a text from Carlos, a supervisor I'd trained from entry level 5 years ago. "Mike, total BS what happened. Gregory's already ordering your desk equipment moved. Wants your parking spot too. Says need to establish new operational paradigm." I set the phone aside, feeling determination crystallize. These executives had calculated my silence, assuming I'd retreat quietly with whatever severance package they offered. They misjudged the loyalty that kept me at Atlantic for 15 years. It wasn't to corporate leadership, but to the workers whose futures depended on this company's integrity and to the systems I'd built that served communities across the Southeast. That evening, I drafted multiple versions of disclosure letters before realizing that direct confrontation would allow them to position me as a disgruntled former employee creating problems. I needed leverage that couldn't be dismissed or explained. Away, I deleted drafts and began planning a more sophisticated approach. Tomorrow was Thursday, the day of our monthly operational review meeting, the same meeting that would now detail projections based on their optimized systems and inflated consulting budgets. Perfect timing for careful exposure of truth. I closed my laptop and walked to the garage, where I kept my restored 1967 Chevy pickup, a weekend project that helped clear my mind after demanding weeks. For the first time since yesterday, I found myself genuinely smiling. These corporate thieves had awakened something in the quiet warehouse supervisor they'd thoughtlessly discarded. Friday morning arrived with unusual clarity, dawn light filtering through kitchen blinds as I prepared for calculated revelation. At my makeshift command center, the dining room table now covered with documents, timelines, and evidence that would reshape Atlantic Distribution's immediate future, I reviewed my strategy one final time. The genius of their fraud lay in its mundane appearance. Consulting fees, shipping adjustments, optimization costs, all legitimate business expenses inflated to generate substantial illicit profits. My years of meticulous documentation had inadvertently built the perfect tool for their undoing. At precisely 8:30 a.m., I initiated my first move. An anonymous email to the compliance hotline, sourced through a VPN that bounced my location across multiple countries, detailed specific instances of the Meridian Logistics overbilling scheme. The message contained just enough verifiable information to spark legitimate investigation without revealing my full knowledge. By 9:15, my burner phone rang with Patricia's number. I let it ring through to voicemail. Her message bristled with forced composure. "Michael, we need to discuss certain concerns raised about company finances. Please call immediately." I deleted the voicemail and drove to the local library, setting up at a computer terminal with a clear view of the parking lot. From there, I sent targeted messages to 3 key personnel: warehouse operations, driver coordination, and a trusted contact in accounts receivable. Each received specific details about upcoming schedule changes that would impact their departments, changes I'd discovered in the confidential restructuring documents. The chaos this would create would overwhelm Patricia's ability to manage both immediate operational demands and the brewing financial investigation. By noon, the effects were cascading through Atlantic's operations. My phone logged missed calls from Patricia, James, and surprisingly, Gregory Martinez himself. But the most telling came from Lisa Chen, a junior accountant I'd helped years ago when she was overwhelmed by inventory discrepancies. "Mr. Torres, someone needs to know. I've been quietly tracking those Meridian Logistics payments. The numbers don't match our service agreements. I kept records." Her whispered confession confirmed my suspicions. Others had noticed irregularities, but lacked either the complete picture or courage to speak up. I drove to a small cafe 40 miles outside Charlotte, positioning myself where I could observe without being easily found. Around 2 p.m., texts began arriving from Carlos and other warehouse staff. Management called emergency all-hands meeting. Gregory looks like he saw a ghost. They're blaming system errors for financial audit being triggered. Another read: Patricia just yelled at shipping supervisor for asking about Meridian Logistics. Invoice, never seen her lose it like that. The pressure was mounting exactly as intended. My phone rang again, this time from Robert Patterson, the corporate attorney I'd worked with during past contract negotiations. Unlike the others, I answered this call. "Michael, we need to discuss your recent separation concerns." These allegations being made are serious. His careful wording suggested he'd already seen portions of evidence I'd strategically leaked. If you have information about financial irregularities, there are proper channels. I replied simply, Robert, I'm disappointed it took anonymous reports for anyone to examine those consulting contracts I flagged months ago. His sharp intake of breath told me he hadn't been fully briefed on my earlier warnings. You flagged these contracts, I interrupted before he could continue. Check the digital archive. Search my name plus Meridian Concerns. You'll find I raised red flags about their billing practices in January. Those emails were marked as filed for future review. The line went quiet for several seconds. Michael, we should meet, if what you're saying is accurate. I cut him off gently. I'm taking the next few days to consider my options, Robert. The truth has a way of emerging regardless of meetings. That evening brought revelations full weight to management's doorstep. At 6 p.m., the anonymous tipster had promised the compliance department detailed financial statements proving systematic fraud. I'd encrypted the files with a password that would be emailed to their internal auditor exactly 1 hour later, ensuring no one could claim the evidence was received too late for Friday review. The documents mapped every fraudulent transaction, complete with dates, amounts, authorization trails, and the complex corporate structure designed to obscure theft. Maria found me in my home office, having returned from her errands. You've been on that computer all day. Are you job hunting? I smiled, the first genuine smile since Tuesday's termination meeting. Something better, ensuring justice for everyone at Atlantic who actually works for their paycheck. She studied my face, recognizing the determined set of my jaw from past challenges we'd overcome together. Want to tell me about it? She asked softly. I organized the visible portions of evidence into a neat stack. Let's have dinner first. This story deserves proper telling. Over her famous enchiladas, I walked Maria through the discovery process, the careful documentation of fraud, and my methodical approach to exposing corporate theft. Her anger built gradually, then erupted. 15 years, Michael. 15 years! You gave them, and this is how they repay loyalty. I reached across the table, taking her hand, which is precisely why they picked the wrong person to wrong. They thought warehouse experience meant warehouse thinking. They forgot that observant people see everything, especially when their futures are at stake. The sun set over Charlotte as we finished dinner, its fading light symbolic of the executive's dimming fortunes. Around 7:30 p.m., my personal email received a message from an address I didn't immediately recognize. Mr. Torres, this is Sarah Mitchell, Chief Operations Officer. The Board of Directors requests your immediate assistance with an urgent matter involving company finances. Name your terms. The wording carefully avoided direct admission of guilt while acknowledging their desperate situation. My response was equally measured. Ms. Mitchell, my expertise regarding Atlantic's operational systems and financial protocols is available through proper legal channels. As midnight approached, news spread through my former colleague's network. Text messages painted a vivid picture. The main office lights remained on well past usual hours. Multiple town cars arrived bearing corporate attorneys, and Patricia's office showed signs of being searched by internal security. Gregory Martinez had reportedly left his hotel without notifying anyone of his departure. The dominoes I'd carefully positioned were falling exactly as calculated. In the pre-dawn hours of Saturday, my phone displayed voicemails from numbers I'd never seen, board members, regional managers, even the CEO's executive assistant. Each message grew more urgent, more contrite, but I was no longer the Michael Torres who needed their validation or feared their power. I was the man who'd built systems they couldn't fully understand, maintain, or corrupt without my silent complicity. The next phase required patience as their scheme unraveled publicly. Saturday morning transformed revelation into reckoning when local news reported major shipping company faces internal fraud investigation. The article carefully avoided naming Atlantic Distribution, citing ongoing investigations, but industry insiders would recognize our recent executive changes and operational disruptions. My phone buzzed incessantly. I'd switched to airplane mode the previous night, allowing only emergency contacts. Maria watched me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "How far do you plan to take this?" she asked over coffee. "Until justice prevails," I answered, then clarified. "Not just for my termination, but for every honest employee whose wages funded executive theft." She nodded, understanding. "You know, when you got fired, I wondered if you'd finally take up fishing like you've always talked about." I chuckled. "Maybe after this settles, though I suspect fishing requires more patience than dismantling corporate fraud schemes." We shared a laugh that felt like healing's beginning. By mid-afternoon, my secure email contained a formal request from the interim board chair, Douglas Freeman, a man whose reputation for fairness had survived 3 decades of corporate politics. His message carried gravity. "Michael, we've discovered the scope of improprieties aligns precisely with your documented warnings. Patricia Warner and James McKinley have been placed on administrative leave. Gregory Martinez has been detained for questioning. The board requires your immediate consultation to prevent operational collapse." This was the moment I'd designed. Corporate leadership recognizing my irreplaceable knowledge while simultaneously acknowledging their failure to protect against internal corruption. I crafted my response carefully. "Mr. Freeman, I appreciate the board's recognition of my contributions to Atlantic's operations. Given recent events, any consultation arrangement must include complete operational authority over warehouse systems, direct reporting to the board of directors, and an independent investigation into how critical employee concerns were dismissed prior to this crisis." His reply arrived within minutes. "Your terms are reasonable given the circumstances. The board requests your presence tomorrow at 9 a.m. for emergency session. Salary negotiations will be handled separately." I smiled at the phrasing, salary negotiations rather than severance discussion. They'd finally understood my value extended beyond hourly warehouse rates. Sunday morning brought unprecedented clarity as I drove toward corporate headquarters, now as a consultant rather than employee. The parking lot held an unusual congregation of executive vehicles for a weekend meeting. Media vans stationed outside suggested the fraud investigation had leaked beyond internal channels. I parked deliberately in the visitor section, no longer bound by employee designations. The boardroom's atmosphere was thick with tension as I entered. Familiar faces showed varying degrees of respect, fear, and calculation. Douglas Freeman stood, immediately extending his hand. "Michael, thank you for coming. Your country needs you, as they say." I returned his firm handshake, noting who else offered greetings and who avoided eye contact. The board had clearly divided between those who'd ignore my warnings and those who'd validated them. "Before we proceed," I began, claiming Patricia's usual seat at the table's head, "I need clear understanding of my authority scope." Freeman nodded gravely. "You'll have executive-level access to all systems, ability to restructure operations as needed, and suspension of any protocols that impede efficiency." I acknowledged with minimal reaction. "And the investigation?" Freeman glanced at the corporate attorney. "FBI Cybercrime Unit is coordinating with our internal audit. They've requested your full cooperation." What followed was 4 hours of intense strategic planning. As I outlined critical system vulnerabilities, exploitation enabled the fraud scheme. Every recommendation I'd made in previous months, every efficiency improvement Patricia had shelved, Every security protocol James had overridden, all now carried weight of vindication. The board listened without interruption as I detailed recovery, procedures for operational stability while investigation continued. By sunset, comprehensive transition plan was established. Immediate separation of suspect executives completed, independent oversight of financial protocols implemented, and my emergency appointment as Chief Operations Consultant formalized. As board members filed out, Douglas approached privately. "Michael, we failed you terribly. The full board's apology is recorded in today's minutes." I met his gaze steadily. Apologies don't recover stolen funds or restore broken trust. Actions do. The following week transformed Atlantic distribution as thoroughly as my termination had attempted. With full operational authority, I systematically dismantled the vulnerabilities Gregory's scheme had exploited while maintaining delivery commitments to our clients. Each day brought new revelations from the FBI investigation, confirming my documented evidence. Patricia and James faced federal grand jury indictments, while Gregory negotiated from his attorney's office, reportedly offering complete cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. Worker morale shifted dramatically as truth emerged. The same employees who'd watched me pack belongings in silence now approached with apologies and renewed dedication. "We knew something wasn't right," Carlos confessed during a loading dock inspection. "But who questions management when your job depends on them?" I responded thoughtfully. "Questioning protects everyone when management forgets who truly drives this company. The workers who handle every package, drive every mile, and maintain every system." By month's end, Atlantic had recovered most diverted funds through asset freezes and insurance claims. The operational improvements I implemented increased efficiency 23% while reducing costs 17%. Metrics that finally appeared in official company communications, attributed correctly this time. My consultant contract evolved into executive reinstatement offer, though titles held less meaning now than purpose. The final irony arrived exactly 1 month after my termination. Patricia Warner, from her holding cell, sent a letter attempting to shift blame. Michael Torres' insistence on outdated protocols prevented necessary modernization that could have prevented this situation. The board shared it confidentially, seeking my response. I simply suggested, actions prove intent. My protocols prevented greater losses when activated. Her actions enabled theft when implemented. In early spring, as new warehouse management systems I designed came online, Douglas Freeman approached about permanent leadership role. "We want you as Chief Operations Officer, Michael. Full authority, report to board, naming your own team." I considered the offer while watching shipping, containers loaded with precision that defined well-trained crews. "The company needs cultural change, Douglas. Leaders who listen before deciding. Systems that protect integrity over profits." He smiled knowingly. "We understand. The board approved complete operational autonomy for your division. Building company back stronger was always your goal." I accepted without ceremony, knowing transformation required action, not titles. The attempted erasure of my contributions had instead elevated them to legendary status within industry circles. Competitors called frequently, having witnessed how one man's institutional knowledge had both saved and reshaped a national logistics operation. Months later, during my first major industry conference as restored operations leader, younger professionals approached with mixture of admiration and curiosity. One asked directly, how did one warehouse supervisor dismantle such an elaborate fraud scheme? I smiled, thinking of that Tuesday morning when they'd assumed my silence meant compliance. I wasn't just a warehouse supervisor. I was the person who understood that every system requires integrity to function. Every operation depends on trust to survive, and every challenge reveals character through response. The revenge they feared never materialized as expected. Instead, truth proved more potent than anger, justice more satisfying than retribution. Patricia received 8-year federal sentence, James 6 years, while Gregory's cooperation reduced his to 3 years, plus substantial financial penalties. The board implemented sweeping reforms, including independent oversight committee and whistleblower protection protocols I'd recommended years earlier. Today, when former colleagues encounter difficult superiors or questionable policies, they remind each other, remember Michael Torres, stay observant, document everything, and trust that truth prevails when revealed properly. My story became cautionary tale for executives and inspiration for workers, proving that silent authority often surpasses vocal power, and that dismissing those who know too much often teaches corporations what they should have protected. The warehouse operates more efficiently than ever, technology harmoniously balanced with human expertise. Each morning, I review operations with team I've assembled. People valued for capability over compliance, knowledge over politics. Maria sometimes joins me for lunch in my corner office, the one I declined initially because management had finally learned truth's cost. We look out over the facility that nearly collapsed from internal rot and recognize that sometimes destruction creates space for proper reconstruction. My story continues as corporate cautionary tale, the patient observer who became inevitable catalyst, the dismissed employee who proved irreplaceable, the silent professional who spoke truth to power through evidence rather than emotion. They thought they knew something I didn't when terminating my position. Instead, I knew everything they tried hiding, and patience transformed knowledge into justice. The warehouse hums with renewed purpose, shipping continues without interruption, and workers finally received respect their dedication earned all along. The Monday following my reinstatement arrived with peculiar clarity. At 5 a.m., I stood at my kitchen counter, methodically preparing lunch as I had for 15 years. But everything felt different. The weight of corporate authority hadn't yet settled into something comfortable. My phone displayed 17 missed calls overnight, mostly from competitors trying to poach now-famous logistics innovator who dismantled multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. I ignored them all, focusing, instead, on the challenges ahead. At 7 a.m., I walked into Atlantic Distribution Headquarters through the main entrance, no longer swiping magnetic access card, but proceeding directly to restricted areas. Security guards straightened upon recognizing me, calling out respectful greetings that echoed through polished corridors. The transformation from terminated employee to executive consultant had reshaped power dynamics overnight. I maintained steady composure while internally processing this dramatic reversal. My first stop was the third-floor operations center, where massive screens displayed nationwide logistics data. 3 supervisors monitored systems I'd developed, implementing emergency protocols during Atlanta's thunderstorm delays. Rebecca Chen noticed my approach and quickly briefed me. Atlanta Hub. Reporting 2-hour backlog. I've rerouted non-critical shipments through Memphis, prioritizing medical and perishable items according to your secondary protocols. Her efficiency highlighted why she'd proven invaluable during crisis management. Excellent initiative, I acknowledged, studying weather patterns affecting southeastern routes. Extend Memphis capacity by transferring frozen goods to Charleston's auxiliary facility. Their temperature control systems can manage overflow for 72 hours. She nodded, already implementing changes through our centralized network. This seamless execution represented countless hours of training, protocol development, and relationship building across our network. Moving to the 4th floor, I encountered Carlos organizing inventory audits. His face brightened with recognition, gratitude, still evident for mentorship that elevated him from warehouse assistant to inventory systems specialist. Michael, implementing those revised SKU categorization codes you created last month. Accuracy already improved 18%. Pride welled, seeing former protege applying advanced logistics principles he'd mastered through dedicated study. Remember, the underlying principle, I reminded him. Efficiency increases when systems adapt to human patterns, not when humans adapt to rigid systems. He grinned, repeating mantra I'd drilled into every operations team. We'd built culture that prioritized practical wisdom over corporate dogma, flexibility over bureaucracy. This philosophy had insulated our workforce from feeling threatened by technological advancement. The executive suite's atmosphere shifted noticeably upon my arrival. Patricia's former office remained eerily vacant, crime scene tape still blocking entrance while federal investigators preserved evidence. James McKinley's corner office showed similar abandonment, desktop computer drives missing, confidential files sealed pending investigation. The physical emptiness mirrored moral vacuum their leadership had created. My temporary office commanded view of entire warehouse complex, positioned where I could observe operations without artificial barriers. The first executive decision involved demolishing these physical separations, literally and metaphorically. I ordered Patricia's office converted to collaborative workspace for cross-department communication. Transparency needed physical manifestation to rebuild organizational trust. Douglas Freeman arrived for our emergency strategy session at 8:30 a.m. His weathered face carried burden of corporate governance failure, contrasting sharply with confident leadership he'd demonstrated throughout my youth. Michael, the board's resolved to support whatever operational changes you deem necessary. We're effectively placing company's future in your hands. His candor demanded equal directness. I won't promise comfortable solutions, I warned, spreading detailed operational analysis across conference table. Years of negligence created systemic vulnerabilities beyond simple management replacement. Complete restructuring requires fundamental culture shift from profit-obsessed hierarchy to trust-centered operations. Douglas studied my preliminary proposals methodically, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed surprisingly thorough operations understanding. Your recommendations appear costly initially, he observed. Employee profit sharing, programs, mandatory ethics training, independent quality audits. How do we justify these to shareholders resistant to reduced quarterly earnings? I'd anticipated this concern, pulling supporting documentation from comprehensive research I'd conducted during enforced unemployment weeks. Short-term costs prevent long-term disasters, I explained systematically. Patricia's scheme wasn't aberration, it was predictable outcome when profit supersedes ethics. Employee investment creates natural fraud detection because their interests align with company survival. Quality audits catch small problems before becoming expensive crises. Ethics training develops decision-makers rather than excuse-makers. My argument combined financial data with philosophical foundation. Douglas approved progressive implementation plan, beginning with immediate ethics review for remaining executives. Word spread quickly through middle management ranks. New reality demanded accountability regardless of position or tenure. Some resisted openly, questioning authority of promoted warehouse supervisor. I addressed such challenges directly, understanding respect earned through confrontation differed from respect demanded through title. During afternoon safety inspection, I encountered Michael Phelps, senior dispatcher notorious for cutting corners to improve delivery metrics. His smugness, barely concealed upon my approach, suggested he considered himself immune to operational overhaul. Torres, heard you're playing executive now, planning to lecture me about following rules like some junior supervisor. His challenge carried audience. Several drivers had paused loading to witness confrontation. No lectures, I replied evenly. approaching his workstation where dispatch logs revealed concerning patterns. Just questions about your impressive efficiency numbers. 20% fewer delays than any other dispatcher, yet your routes consistently exceed fuel budgets and insurance costs. His bravado wavered slightly as I highlighted specific incidents he'd attributed to driver error. "That's just the nature of business," he deflected. "Sometimes we push limits to meet deadlines." I nodded sympathetically before delivering crucial insight. 37 near-miss incidents reported on your routes last month. Compare that to Jennifer Martinez's district. Similar volume, 0 incidents, only slightly longer delivery times. Which approach truly serves company interests? The mathematical comparison deflated his swagger completely. Other drivers nodded appreciatively, recognizing validation of safety concerns they'd repeatedly voiced. Effective today, dispatcher. Performance metrics include safety scores alongside delivery efficiency. No bonuses for speed that risks lives or equipment. His protest died unspoken, recognizing new paradigm demanded genuine excellence, not manipulated statistics. This public confrontation established precedent, authority now derived from competence and integrity, not merely position. Word spread. Through warehouse networks, the quiet systems analyst had evolved into leader who valued substance over appearance, results over political maneuvering. Former skeptics reassessed their assumptions about leadership capability originating from shop floor rather than executive training programs. By late afternoon, first major crisis tested new authority structure. Charleston Distribution Center reported catastrophic conveyor system failure threatening $2 million pharmaceutical shipment deadline. Traditional protocol required executive approval through 3 management layers before implementing major repairs. Instead, I contacted Charleston Operations Manager directly, bypassing hierarchy entirely. "Tommy O'Brien, this is Michael Torres. I understand you're facing equipment failure. What's your assessment?" His surprise at direct executive contact battled professional crisis response. "Sir, main conveyor bearings seized. Replacement requires 12 hours minimum, but refrigerated shipment deadlines tonight. Manual sorting's too slow for volume." "Tommy, I remember you from cross-training rotation. You proposed modular overflow system during last year's innovation forum." His intake breath suggested forgotten proposal, suddenly recalled. "That system never got approval budget. Too experimental, they said." I felt familiar frustration with bureaucratic inertia. "Consider it approved. Implement immediately using available materials. Temporary workarounds allowed if they maintain product integrity. I'll authorize overtime and expedited parts delivery." His excitement transmitted clearly through phone connection. "Yes, sir, we can absolutely make this work. The team's been ready." This represented philosophy I championed: trust capable workers to solve problems creatively. 4 hours later, Tommy called triumphantly. Pharmaceutical shipment delivered with 45 minutes to spare. Modular system worked perfectly. Drivers are calling it O'Brien's pipeline. Think we might have stumbled onto permanent improvement idea. Success bred confidence, confidence bred innovation, exactly the culture we needed cultivating. Evening brought unexpected visitor, Maria arriving with dinner, finding me buried in operational reports. "You missed calls about poker night with neighbors," she chided gently, unpacking homemade tamales that filled office with comforting aroma. Her presence grounded me amid corporate machinations. "Probably wise I skipped," I admitted, sampling her cooking. "Pete's been consulting for Gregory's defense team, apparently. Might be awkward." She studied my face carefully. "You're not carrying this burden alone anymore, right? You've got whole company backing you now." Her concern touched deeper truth. "Old habits," I conceded. 15 years of solving problems solo doesn't rewire overnight. But I'm learning to delegate, building team that actually shares responsibility." She smiled approvingly. "Remember when Tommy was 9 and couldn't let go of his training wheels? Sometimes we hold on to what kept us safe, even after we're ready for more freedom." Her analogy sparked important reflection. Corporate trauma had created protective mechanisms that now hindered necessary transformation. Trust issues wasn't just about subordinates' reliability, it included allowing myself vulnerability within leadership role. Maria's wisdom often cut through complex situations I'd intellectualized unnecessarily. Tuesday morning revealed investigations expanding scope. FBI Special Agent Patricia Wong arrived requesting comprehensive access to historical financial records. Her professional demeanor couldn't mask excitement about Atlantic case's implications for corporate fraud detection methodology. "Mr. Torres, your documentation methods are being studied as exemplar for early fraud identification. Would you consider consulting on enhanced detection protocols?" "Certainly," I agreed. While noting irony that external law enforcement recognized value my own executives had dismissed. We spent morning reviewing sophisticated audit trails I'd developed, explaining how pattern recognition combined with institutional knowledge created virtually undefeatable fraud detection system when properly utilized. "How did you convince management to implement such comprehensive tracking?" Agent Wong inquired, genuinely curious about bureaucratic navigation. I responded candidly, "I didn't. Most protocols existed purely for my reference. Management preferred plausible deniability over accountability." Her knowing nod suggested this pattern repeated across corporate America. Wednesday brought breakthrough, moment when Gregory Martinez's attorney contacted me directly, presumably after exhausting other approaches. Jonathan Sterling represented premier defense firm that commanded astronomical fees usually reserved for Fortune 500 legal warfare. His confident voice masked underlying desperation. "Mr. Torres, my client wishes to discuss potential cooperation agreement." "Your client's cooperation belongs exclusively with federal investigators," I stated firmly. "I'm operations executive, not prosecution witness." His careful pause preceded recalibrated approach. "Of course, we simply thought your perspective on dream mitigating circumstances might inform plea negotiations. This transparent attempt at influence warranted direct response." "Mr. Sterling, Gregory Martinez exploited systems I built while undermining warnings I provided. There are no mitigating circumstances in my perspective, only opportunities for your client to demonstrate genuine remorse through transparent disclosure." His disappointed acknowledgement concluded conversation, though I suspected more sophisticated approaches would follow. By Thursday, media attention intensified as industry publications recognized logistics implications beyond simple fraud case. Shipping Weekly featured cover story, "Inside Job, How One Employee Toppled Executive Corruption." Ironically, publicity I'd studiously avoided now painted me as reluctant hero, narrative I neither sought nor encouraged, but understood served larger purpose. Media interest brought unexpected development, speaking invitations from logistics conferences previously dominated by executive perspectives. One particularly intriguing offer came from MIT's Supply Chain Management Forum, requesting keynote address about integration of human expertise with technological systems. These opportunities represented platform for advocating worker-centric operations beyond Atlantic's boundaries. Friday afternoon's board meeting would determine whether revolutionary ideas could institutionalize beyond crisis response. I prepared meticulously, knowing proposals challenged conventional corporate structure fundamentally. The conference room filled with regional directors, board members, and cautious optimism about company's direction. "Gentlemen, recent events exposed vulnerability, not just in financial oversight, but operational philosophy, I began, commanding attention through measured delivery. We built empire on efficiency metrics that prioritize speed over sustainability, profit over people, hierarchy over harmony. This foundation proved unstable when tested by ethical compromise. My presentation outlined radical restructuring, elimination of traditional management layers, implementation of autonomous work teams, and revolutionary profit-sharing model based on collective performance metrics. Each proposal drew murmurs, some appreciative, others apprehensive. The room's energy crackled with tension between innovation and tradition. Michael, Board Member Harrison spoke carefully. These changes represent fundamental shift from industry standard. What convinces you employees can handle such responsibility? His question echoed unspoken concerns about democratized authority threatening established control mechanisms. Sir, I present evidence from our own operations, I responded, pulling crisis management statistics. During leadership vacuum following fraud discovery, frontline employees maintained 97% service levels, prevented significant losses, and innovated solutions executives wouldn't have conceived. They demonstrated capacity we'd systematically discouraged while rewarding compliance over creativity. Numbers carried argument where philosophy might fail. Board members exchanged meaningful glances, calculating risks versus demonstrated capabilities. Douglas Freeman provided crucial support. Gentlemen, conventional management failed spectacularly. Perhaps it's time conventional wisdom yielded to proven performance. His backing shifted momentum decisively. Weekend preparations involved intensive workshops with operations teams about impending organizational transformation. I deliberately conducted sessions in warehouse rather than corporate training facilities, reinforcing message that authority resided where actual work occurred. Workers responded enthusiastically to forthcoming autonomy while acknowledging responsibility's weight. What happens if teams make mistakes? Junior forklift operator named Elena asked perceptively. Currently, management absorbs blame. With self-management, are we personally liable? Her concern reflected mature understanding of accountability implications. I used analogy familiar to logistics professionals. Elena, consider truck maintenance. Experienced drivers perform routine checks knowing mechanical failure affects everyone's safety. They report issues because prevention benefits all. Similarly, team-based management involves collective vigilance where everyone contributes to preventative measures. Mistakes aren't eliminated. They're addressed collaboratively before becoming disasters. This explanation resonated across experience levels. Workers understood intuitively that shared responsibility created stronger systems than hierarchical blame assignment. Their engagement during preliminary discussions exceeded optimistic projections, suggesting readiness for organizational evolution exceeded management's historically low expectations. Monday's transformation began with symbolic gesture. Patricia's executive suite converted into innovation hub, where cross-functional teams could collaborate without appointment scheduling or approval chains. The physical demolition of walls represented dismantling invisible barriers that had stratified company culture for decades. Workers watched with satisfaction as hierarchical architecture yielded to collaborative design. Integration challenges emerged immediately. Veteran supervisors struggled releasing control, while newer employees hesitated claiming increased authority. I implemented mentorship rotations, pairing experienced leaders with emerging talent, creating knowledge transfer channels that preserved institutional wisdom while encouraging fresh perspectives. The learning curve proved steeper than anticipated, but yielded richer discussions than management meetings ever produced. Tuesday afternoon brought unexpected validation when competing logistics firm Continental Express offered acquisition proposal valued at $5 billion, premium price reflecting quality of workforce and systems Continental recognized as superior to compromised executive leadership of recent past. Their CEO, Marcus Wellington, personally presented offer during surprise visit. Michael, your team's reputation for operational excellence survived scandal. That's remarkable, Wellington acknowledged. Candidly, Continental would preserve current management structure, meaning you'd lead national operations. His proposal included massive retention bonuses for key personnel, myself included. The offer commanded serious consideration given its magnitude. I requested 48 hours deliberation time while internally recognizing this presented ultimate test of transformation authenticity. Would I guide Atlantic through revolutionary restructuring or accept lucrative exit opportunity? The decision weighed heavily, particularly given financial security it would guarantee my family. Maria deserved consideration after supporting my career through countless challenges. Wednesday morning's all-hands meeting addressed rumors exploding across warehouse networks about potential sale. I decided transparency required acknowledging offer while reinforcing commitment to ongoing transformation. Everyone's heard speculation about Continental Express. Yes, they've presented acquisition proposal. No, I haven't made decisions unilaterally. Relief spread through crowd. Prior management would have negotiated secretly. My preference remains building Atlantic into company we envision rather than selling to competitors, I continued firmly. But this decision affects everyone's future. I've requested Continental's representatives address our entire workforce tomorrow. After hearing their plans, we'll collectively determine whether transformation continues here or requires different context. This unprecedented approach, involving workers in corporate strategy, generated palpable excitement. Thursday's assembly drew warehouse workers, drivers, administrative staff, and Continental's executive team into massive loading bay converted into impromptu auditorium. Marcus Wellington delivered compelling presentation about Continental's growth strategy, integration plans, and personnel retention guarantees. His professionalism commanded respect despite representing potential buyer rather than partner. Following formal presentation, I orchestrated Q&A session where employees directly questioned Continental's leadership about job security, operational autonomy, and cultural preservation. Wellington's responses balanced honesty with optimism, acknowledging integration challenges while promising comprehensive support for Atlantic's innovative restructuring efforts. When my turn to question arrived, I posed crucial inquiry. Mr. Wellington, would Continental preserve Atlantic's experimental management structure, including worker autonomy initiatives? His answer would determine viability of continuing transformation under new ownership. Michael, honestly, our traditional structure differs significantly, he admitted. However, we're studying your methods with genuine interest. Initial integration might require a hybrid approach, maintaining Continental's proven systems while gradually incorporating Atlantic's innovations. Full worker autonomy represents significant departure from our standard operations. His candor clarified fundamental incompatibility despite generous financial terms. Integration would inevitably compromise precisely the cultural transformation that made Atlantic's recovery remarkable. After Wellington's departure, I convened leadership team for critical decision-making session. Friday's announcement to Continental came directly from board rather than through me, appropriate given corporate hierarchy for major business decisions. Douglas Freeman's tactful rejection emphasized desire to pursue independent transformation before considering future partnerships. Continental responded professionally, maintaining offers availability while expressing hope for continued industry collaboration. That evening, Maria found me contemplating stars from our back porch. "You turned down life-changing money to continue battling corporate culture," she observed gently. "That's either principle or foolishness. Sometimes both look identical." Her understanding carried mixture of support and concern. "We're building proof that business success doesn't require exploitation," I explained thoughtfully. "If Continental wanted our innovative systems, they should have restructured first. Acquisition would have validated old methods, just needed better people, not different principles." She nodded slowly, accepting philosophical commitment that defined our marriage's 3 decades. Weekend brought personal breakthrough when my son Tommy returned from engineering studies, bringing girlfriend Julie, whom we were meeting first time. Their arrival coincided with local news coverage about Atlantic's restructuring, inspiring other companies to question traditional management hierarchies. Tommy's pride was evident as media painted his father as business visionary. "Dad, professors use your fraud detection methods as case study now," he shared excitedly. "They're calling it Torres algorithm in supply chain security courses." His academic validation meant more than media acclaim. Building something larger than personal vindication had always been deeper motivation. Julie, studying organizational psychology, asked perceptive questions about worker response to increased autonomy. Research shows mixed results when hierarchies flatten rapidly. "How are your employees handling transition psychologically?" Her academic interest highlighted concerns I'd partially overlooked amid operational transformation. "Honestly, mixed responses," I admitted readily. "Some embrace responsibility eagerly, others miss clear instruction chains. We're implementing support systems, peer mentoring, anonymous feedback channels, regular adjustment evaluations. Change management wasn't my expertise until circumstances demanded its mastery." Her thoughtful nod suggested psychological complexity I'd underestimated. "Your approach combines trust with structure, crucial balance many companies miss." Removing oversight completely often creates anxiety, matching excessive control. Sounds like you're finding middle ground empirically. Her academic framework helped contextualize practical observations we'd made through trial and error. Coming week would demand consolidating gains while addressing resistance points becoming increasingly visible. Some veteran managers struggled with distributed decision-making, preferring clear command structures that eliminated ambiguity along with creativity. Their hesitation threatened momentum gained through early successes. Sunday evening strategy planning identified specific pressure points requiring attention. Procurement processes slowed by team consensus requirements. Maintenance schedules complicated by democratic input. And customer service protocols challenged when representatives exercised independent judgment, conflicting with corporate scripts. These growing pains required solutions preserving autonomy's benefits while maintaining operational consistency. Resolution emerged through principle I'd applied repeatedly. Systems adapt to human nature rather than forcing humans into rigid systems. We developed decision frameworks, providing guidance, boundaries without dictating specific outcomes. Team members gained clarity about authority limits while retaining genuine autonomy within defined parameters. This balance addressed anxiety Julie had identified psychologically. By month's end, Atlantic's transformation showed quantifiable results. Customer satisfaction improved 22% despite crisis disruption. On-time deliveries maintained industry-leading 98.5% despite management upheaval, and worker retention exceeded previous records with voluntary attrition dropping to near zero. These metrics validated philosophical approach with hard data that satisfied even traditional business skeptics. The unexpected invitation arrived Tuesday morning, testifying before congressional subcommittee studying corporate governance reform following multiple high-profile fraud cases, including ours. Senator Patricia Morrison's office specifically requested my presence given first-hand experience exposing executive misconduct while maintaining operational integrity. This platform could influence policy beyond single company. Congressional testimony preparation consumed following weeks as legal team helped navigate political complexities while preserving authenticity. The opportunity to advocate for structural changes preventing future fraud attracted me more than personal recognition. My message would emphasize how employee knowledge constitutes first line of fraud detection when channels exist for raising concerns without fear. The corporate revolution I'd inadvertently triggered expanded beyond Atlantic's boundaries as industry publications featured transformation as case study in business ethics recovery. Management consultants began incorporating Torres principles into corporate restructuring proposals, though I wondered whether terminology captured spirit or merely symbolized trendy buzzword adoption. Yet amid external validation, internal challenges persisted. Cultural transformation couldn't be achieved through proclamations alone. Each day brought friction points where old habits confronted new paradigms. Progress required constant dialogue, patient explanation, and occasional firm directive when autonomy approached chaos. The journey from terminated warehouse supervisor to corporate change agent had transformed not just my professional trajectory, but fundamental beliefs about power's proper role within organizations. Authority, properly wielded, amplified capability, rather than suppressed it. Leadership meant cultivating excellence in others, rather than centralizing control exclusively. Standing at office window overlooking warehouse floor, where I'd invested 15 years of knowledge and labor, I recognized satisfaction's true source. Revenge had converted to justice. Justice had evolved into transformation. The executives who'd thought themselves clever in eliminating perceived threat had instead unleashed force that reshaped not just Atlantic distribution, but potentially industry-wide perspectives on corporate governance and worker dignity. Maria often reminded me of her grandmother's saying, "Water shapes rock through patience, not force." The gradual dissolution of corporate dysfunction required similar persistence. Each day brought incremental progress, measured not just in financial metrics but in human dignity restored, creativity unleashed, and community strengthened. The revolution wasn't televised. It was documented in delivery manifests reflecting improved efficiency, safety reports showing reduced incidents and satisfaction, surveys revealing unprecedented worker engagement. These mundane records chronicled profound cultural shift from fear-based compliance to trust-driven excellence. My office phone displayed 17 voicemails from headhunters offering astronomical compensation for bringing Torres methodology to their client corporations. These messages represented flattering testament to transformed reputation, but also misunderstanding of core principle. Sustainable change couldn't be imported like software package. It required indigenous development, nurtured by those who would live within its framework. The warehouse floor buzzed beneath executive suite, familiar sounds carrying different energy now. Workers moved with purpose that transcended merely following instructions. They problem-solved actively, consulted collaboratively, and innovated confidently. This transformation represented vindication, sweeter than any personal triumph. As Atlantic Distribution's second quarter results exceeded projections despite leadership upheaval, or perhaps because of it, the business community took notice. Success validates philosophy more effectively than theoretical argument. Other logistics companies quietly approached about consulting on cultural transformation, recognizing competitive advantage in worker-centric operations. Yet my commitment remained primarily to Atlantic's people, those who'd invested careers in company only to watch leadership betray fundamental trust. Their resilience through crisis deserved outcomes exceeding mere stability. They merited partnership in shaping future rather than just labor in building someone else's vision. The path forward remained illuminated by principles discovered through adversity. Transparency prevented exploitation, trust multiplied rather than divided capability, and justice served through elevation exceeded justice sought through destruction. Patricia, James, and Gregory faced their consequences through proper legal channels. Our energy focused on construction rather than continued demolition. In quiet moments between operational demands, I reflected on unexpected journey from disposable employee to irreplaceable change catalyst. The warehouse supervisor they'd terminated possessed more hidden strength than corporate executives who'd underestimated working-class resilience and overestimated their own cleverness. The story continued unfolding daily, each successful delivery representing triumph over cynical expectations, each innovation proving creativity flourishes when fear recedes. Atlantic's transformation transcended business case study, becoming testament to human potential unleashed when artificial limitations dissolve. Those 17 years of loyal service hadn't prepared me for executive leadership through traditional channels. Instead, they'd equipped me with something more valuable: intimate understanding of systems, human foundations, and unwavering commitment to protecting those who make organizational success possible. Corporate America needed more leaders emerging from warehouse floors than graduating from business schools. Power's true measure wasn't found in corner offices or organization charts, but in capacity to elevate others while maintaining integrity under pressure. The executives who'd engineered my dismissal learned too late that elimination merely relocated rather than destroyed knowledge, accompanied by moral conviction. As month's end approached, media speculation intensified about Atlantic's long-term viability post-scandal. Financial analysts questioned whether experiment in industrial democracy could survive quarterly earnings pressures. Their skepticism revealed entrenched beliefs that hierarchy alone ensures efficiency, precisely the assumption our success challenged daily. Atlantic's story resonated beyond logistics industry, inspiring discussions about reimagining corporate structures across American business landscape. Universities contacted about developing curriculum, incorporating our methodologies. Documentary filmmakers proposed capturing transformation for educational purposes. Each request represented opportunity to influence broader change. Yet true satisfaction emerged from smaller victories. Veteran driver Marcus transitioning seamlessly to team leadership role. Administrative assistant Sarah suggesting policy improvements that streamlined entire billing department and maintenance. Crew implementing predictive repair system they'd conceptualized but never previously proposed. These everyday innovations accumulated into competitive advantage no committee could have strategically planned. Collective intelligence, properly channeled, exceeded individual brilliance isolated by hierarchy. The quiet revolution proceeded one empowered decision at a time, each success reinforcing confidence necessary for bold initiatives. The investigation's conclusion brought final accounting of executive misconduct's scope. Total fraud exceeded initial estimates, reaching $7.2 million when subsidiary schemes were included. Yet company not only survived, but thrived through crisis, demonstrating resilience built by workers who genuinely cared about organizational health. Federal sentencing guidelines would determine Patricia, James, and Gregory's fates, while Atlantic continued forward momentum. Their story served as cautionary tale about greed's corrosive effect on ethical leadership. Our story emerged as inspiration about redemption possible when organizations choose integrity over expedience. Standing at threshold of new phase, post-crisis, mid-transformation, I recognized Journey's ultimate insight. They hadn't just terminated position, they'd terminated relationship built on mutual exploitation. Liberation lay in reconstruction, based on authentic partnership, where success benefited all contributors rather than privileged few. The warehouse that had once represented limitation now symbolized possibility. Each forklift's movement, every package's journey carried weight of transformed purpose. We weren't merely moving goods, we were demonstrating alternative business, model where profit served people rather than reversed arrangement. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as Continental's offer remained open and other companies watched our progress with calculating interest. Yet conviction solidified. Atlantic's transformation required completion before considering any external partnerships. The revolution couldn't be exported until fully rooted domestically. Maria was right. Turning down multi-million-dollar acquisition displayed either principle or foolishness. But certain forks in road demanded choosing based on legacy desired rather than comfort guaranteed. We built something unprecedented that deserved protection until strong enough to influence rather than be influenced. The quiet supervisor they'd underestimated had evolved into change agent, whose influence extended beyond Atlantic's loading docks. Each speech invited, every article requested, all consulting proposals received represented opportunities to multiply transformation's impact. But foundation remained local. Those workers who'd maintained trust through crisis deserved primary loyalty. As week's end approached, contemplation deepened about responsibility accompanying unexpected platform. Voice amplified through circumstance, carried obligation toward those still suffering under dysfunctional corporate structures. Atlantic's success provided not just vindication, but vehicle for advocating systematic reform. The investigation's closure brought unexpected visitor, Senator Patricia herself, conducting personal inspection of Atlantic's transformation before scheduled congressional testimony. Her presence drew media attention, highlighting corporate governance reform's urgency. We discussed candidly about bridging gap between legislative intent and workplace reality. Michael, laws can mandate transparency, but culture changes must emerge organically, she observed astutely. Your experience suggests workforce already possesses wisdom required for ethical operations if given proper channels for expression. Nashada, her understanding encouraged hope that policymakers might genuinely seek input from frontline perspectives rather than just management consultants. Her visit coincided with announcement that Maria had decided pursuing community college teaching, position to help others transition careers post-corporate downsizing. Her choice reflected family commitment to empowering workers beyond Atlantic's boundaries. We shared vision about multiplication through education rather than just elevation through example. Standing where Patricia once commanded through intimidation, I monitored operations with perspective she never achieved. True power wasn't exercised over others, but cultivated within them. Executive suite provided platform for amplification rather than domination. Each decision balanced immediate benefits against long-term cultural implications. The transformation's most profound lesson emerged clearly. Corporate dysfunction stemmed not from individual corruption, but systematic encouraged such behavior. Changing players without changing rules merely delayed rather than prevented similar scandals. Atlantic's revolution succeeded because it rewrote fundamental assumptions about organizational structure. Thursday's all-hands meeting addressed transformation's tangible results while acknowledging continued challenges. Workers deserved acknowledgement of their exceptional performance during extraordinary circumstances. Their resilience had sustained operations while leadership void threatened collapse. Now partnership would define future rather than hierarchy. 6 months ago, many predicted Atlantic's demise following executive exposure. I reflected publicly. Instead, we've demonstrated that companies built on trust generate stronger performance than those managed through control. Each of you proved what theorists debate. Workers closest to actual operations possess deepest understanding of improvement opportunities. Applause echoed through loading bay, but satisfaction emerged from individual conversations afterward. Drivers described reduced stress leading to safer performance. Administrative staff reported increased creativity solving customer challenges. Maintenance crews celebrated preventative innovations, saving costly repairs. These personal victories validated systemic assumptions. The revolution had democratized not just decision-making, but success's definition. Metrics expanded beyond profit to include safety records, customer loyalty, innovation frequency, and worker satisfaction. Balanced scorecards reflected holistic organizational health rather than singular financial obsession that enabled previous leadership's ethical lapses. Tomorrow would bring congressional testimony carrying weight beyond personal experience. Opportunity existed to influence national dialogue about corporate governance reform. The platform carried responsibility to represent not just Atlantic's workers, but millions laboring under unnecessarily exploitative conditions across American industry. Preparation intensified as opening statement crystallized around central argument. Fraud prevention required structural transparency more than regulatory oversight. Workers possessed inherent interest in organizational success when treated as stakeholders rather than resources. Legislative reform should empower rather than police ethical behavior. The journey from quiet warehouse supervisor to corporate transformation catalyst hadn't ended. It had merely reached intermission. Media attention, speaking invitations, and consulting proposals represented tools for broader impact rather than personal aggrandizement. Purpose transcended vindication, aiming toward reformation of American business culture. Evening reflection brought clarity about path forward. Atlantic's experiment in worker-centric management needed completion before expanding influence externally. Proof of concept required sustained success, not just crisis management excellence. True leadership meant patience to build foundations carefully rather than rushing to capitalize on momentum. Maria joined me on back porch, bringing customary evening coffee that grounded me amid corporate complexities. "You know," she mused, "most people dream about revenge against wrongdoers. You've somehow converted vindication into revolution." Her observation highlighted transformation's unexpected trajectory from personal justice to systemic change. "Sometimes," I replied thoughtfully, "the greatest revenge isn't destroying those who wronged you. It's building something so sustainable and superior that it makes their methods obsolete." She smiled approvingly, squeezing my hand. The stars above mirrored warehouse floors' illumination below, where third shift workers continued operations seamlessly. Their dedication through crisis had proven organizational strength resided in collective capability rather than individual authority. The executives who discharged me had inadvertently released force that would reshape more than single company. Tomorrow's challenges would test whether revolution's momentum could sustain against predictable resistance. Change agents faced consistent opposition from those benefiting under old systems. Yet confidence grew from observing workers' transformation once artificial limitations dissolved. Human potential required only opportunity, not permission. The warehouse that had once contained career aspirations now launched broader mission. Each successful delivery reinforced proof that trust-based operations exceeded control-driven alternatives. Workers empowered with autonomy generated innovations management committees couldn't predict. The quiet observation period had ended. Active advocacy began. Atlantic Distribution's transformation continued one partnership at a time, one innovation at a time, one converted skeptic at a time. The former executives faced their consequences while we built future defined by possibility rather than limitation. Their attempt to silence institutional knowledge had ultimately amplified its influence throughout industry. As month concluded, reflection deepened on unexpected journey's meaning. The terminated warehouse supervisor had evolved beyond seeking personal vindication to championing systemic transformation. Power's true measure lay not in commanding authority, but in enabling others' success. The revolution proceeded precisely because it prioritized collective elevation over individual triumph. Standing at crossroads between past achievement and future potential, commitment crystallized. Atlantic's success would become catalyst for broader reform rather than isolated exception. The congressional platform would carry message beyond personal experience to structural critique, demanding nationwide attention. Workers deserved champion who understood their reality intimately. The quiet man who'd observed everything while appearing to see nothing had transformed into vocal advocate whose silence now spoke louder than any shouted protest. Justice achieved through patient documentation exceeded vengeance, pursued through emotional reaction. Truth, properly presented, became more powerful than any manipulation or deception. The warehouse lights dimmed gradually as loading operations transitioned to night crews, maintaining continuous service. Each package moved represented more than economic transaction. It symbolized trust, restored between workers and organization. They served. The revolution's true victory lay not in executive downfall, but in worker elevation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, continued resistance, and opportunities for expanding influence. Yet foundation remained solid. Organizations succeed sustainably when structured around human dignity rather than profit extraction. The terminated employee had returned as transformation catalyst, whose quiet observation had accumulated into irrefutable evidence for change. Patricia, James, and Gregory had taught unintentional lesson about corruption's corrosive effects on corporate culture. Our response demonstrated how integrity systematically implemented creates lasting competitive advantage. The student had surpassed teachers not through superior manipulation, but through commitment to principles they'd abandoned. As Atlantic's transformation entered consolidation phase, broader mission clarified. Prove that ethical business practices generate superior results sustainably. The experiment mattered beyond single company, potentially influencing how American corporations balanced stakeholder interests. Every successful quarter validated worker-centric models' viability. The journey from warehouse floor to executive suite had transcended personal vindication, becoming testament to hidden strength within America's working class. When properly utilized, collective intelligence exceeded hierarchical decision-making capacity. Organizations built on trust perform better than those managed through fear. Tomorrow's congressional testimony would carry this message to national platform. The quiet warehouse supervisor who dismantled executive fraud now spoke for millions, laboring under needlessly exploitative conditions. Power's proper purpose emerged clearly, amplifying others' potential rather than concentrating individual authority. The revolution continued one empowered decision at a time, each success reinforcing confidence necessary for broader transformation. Patricia Warner's corner office, converted to collaborative workspace, symbolized physical manifestation of philosophical shift from control to partnership. Workers moved through space previously forbidden with casual confidence befitting stakeholders. Rather than subordinates, Atlantic Distribution's second act had begun not with revenge, but reconstruction, not with destruction, but development. The terminated supervisor returned as architect of alternative corporate model, proving exploitation unnecessary for profitability. Each quarterly result reinforced truth they'd tried suppressing. Engaged workers generate superior outcomes when treated as partners. Standing where Patricia once dictated policy changes without consultation, I monitored autonomous teams solving challenges collaboratively. True power radiated not from positional authority, but from witnessing human potential systematically unleashed. The quiet observer had become intentional catalyst, whose patient documentation accumulated into irrefutable case for corporate reformation. The story continued writing itself through daily operations where workers innovated freely, customers received exceptional service consistently, and stakeholders benefited equitably. Executive corruption had attempted erasing institutional knowledge, only to amplify its influence exponentially. Their greatest error lay not in underestimating single employee, but in misunderstanding entire workforce's inherent capabilities. The morning of Atlantic Distribution's annual shareholders' meeting arrived with unprecedented significance. Unlike previous years' formal presentations, this gathering would showcase worker participation in corporate governance for the first time. 5 democratically elected employee representatives joined executive leadership and traditional board members at the dais, a sight that would have seemed impossible 15 months earlier when Patricia Warner ruled through intimidation. Shareholders filled the auditorium, their expressions ranging from curiosity to calculated skepticism. Institutional investors particularly scrutinized what they perceived as corporate experiment, potentially threatening fiduciary responsibility. Yet third consecutive quarter of record performance had dampened vocal opposition considerably. Board Chairman Douglas Freeman opened proceedings with remarkable candor. Ladies and gentlemen, Atlantic Distribution's transformation emerged from existential crisis, revealing fundamental truth about organizational excellence. The old guard, myself included, permitted corruption precisely because we feared questioning traditional authority structures. His admission drew surprised murmurs from shareholders expecting defensive posturing. Elena Martinez, elected warehouse worker representative, stood with composure that belied her 28 years. 6 months ago, I operated forklift overnight shifts, wondering whether speaking up about safety concerns would cost my employment. Today, I present initiatives our frontline teams developed increasing efficiency 23% while reducing accidents to 0. Her confident delivery emphasized democratization's tangible benefits rather than theoretical philosophy. Financial Officer Michael Hendricks presented unprecedented transparency, all executive compensation tied to collective performance metrics, including worker satisfaction, safety records, and sustainable profit margins. Traditional CEO packages reward quarterly gains, often achieved through workforce exploitation. Our model only rewards leadership when all stakeholders prosper. The revolutionary approach generated appreciative applause from employee group while producing concerned whispers among private equity representatives. During Q&A session, venture capitalist Howard Berkeley challenged fundamental premise. Mr. Torres, you've essentially given inmates control of the asylum. How does management maintain direction when workers set policy? His loaded metaphor revealed embedded assumptions about workforce capability deserving direct confrontation. Mr. Berkeley, your analogy perfectly illustrates why traditional management fails so consistently, I responded firmly. Viewing workers as inmates whom executives must control creates adversarial relationships, destroying value systematically. Our direction emerges from thousands of informed decisions made by those closest to operations, rather than handful of isolated executives prone to groupthink. Berkeley pressed aggressively, but surely complex strategic decisions require centralized authority. His question represented conventional wisdom's last line of defense against distributed intelligence models. Carlos Silva, maintenance team representative, stood unexpectedly. Tall and weathered from decades of physical labor, his presence commanded attention without demanding it. "Sir, our team prevented $3 million equipment failure 2 weeks ago. Through early detection, previous management would have mandated routine maintenance we knew was insufficient. We identified bearing stress patterns through direct experience, not quarterly reports. Complex decisions require frontline knowledge." The exchange crystallized philosophical divide between theoretical management and practical operation. Shareholder Rebecca Wong, representing Pacific Investment Fund, emerged as supportive voice. Berkeley's questions ignore documented performance improvements. My fund increased holdings specifically because Atlantic proved worker participation, enhances rather than inhibits competitive advantage. Her market-focused endorsement validated transformation financially. Environmental advocate Sarah Chen announced unexpected partnership. Next quarter, Atlantic launches industry's first carbon-neutral delivery network developed entirely through worker innovation. Drivers identified route optimizations and alternative fuel transitions executives missed completely. The announcement generated spontaneous applause, demonstrating transformation's expanding environmental impact. Meeting concluded with shareholder vote on constitutional amendments formalizing distributed governance. Results overwhelmed skeptics. 78% approval, including majority of institutional investors recognizing structural advantage. Elena's emotional speech captured watershed moment. "You didn't just approve policy changes. You endorsed fundamental human dignity's integration into corporate structure." Following meeting, private conversations revealed shifting investor psychology. BlackRock's senior analyst admitted quietly, "We're studying Atlantic as template for portfolio companies. ESG investing demands authentic stakeholder capitalism, not performative gestures." His acknowledgement suggested mainstream finance recognizing sustainable value creation required genuine democratization. Returning to headquarters, spontaneous celebration erupted across facility. Workers hadn't merely witnessed history, they'd actively shaped it through elected representatives articulating operational wisdom at highest corporate level. The assembly line stopped briefly as employees applauded transformation's validation through shareholder democracy. That evening, unexpected visitor arrived. James McKinley, former CFO imprisoned for fraud, released on supervised probation. His appearance at my office door generated mixed emotions after role in original termination. Physical imprisonment had clearly impacted him. Thinner, grayer, carrying humility absent during executive tenure. "Michael, I've spent months contemplating how arrogance blinded me to obvious truths you documented carefully," he began hesitantly. "May I share information possibly helpful for continued transformation?" His question surprised. Most criminals avoided former victims after incarceration. I gestured toward chair, curiosity overcoming residual resentment. "What information, James?" "I've maintained contact with other executives serving sentences for corporate misconduct," he explained. Carefully, "We've developed informal network examining how fraud flourishes when hierarchical distance separates leadership from operational reality. Our findings align disturbingly with your transformation methodology." His research revealed pattern across multiple corporate scandals. Fraud probability increased proportionally, with management layers separating executives from ground truth. Distance created cognitive blind spots where manipulation disguised as innovation seemed legitimate, More telling, whistleblowers had attempted early warnings before crises, invariably dismissed by intermediary management fearing executive disapproval. "These aren't just theoretical observations," James continued intensely. "I'm developing rehabilitation program for business schools teaching authentic stakeholder engagement before cynicism takes root. Would Atlantic consider partnering on preventative education?" His proposition surprised again. Genuine desire for redemption through systemic reform. "We established conditional partnership, beginning with pilot program, at Carolina's Business School. James would conduct workshops about executive ethical failures, while Atlantic workers shared prevention strategies emerged from experience. The unlikely collaboration demonstrated transformation, expanding beyond internal boundaries into educational system itself. Later that week, Secretary of Labor Maria Sanchez visited personally to observe operations deemed worthy of federal case study. Walking through facilities, she witnessed firsthand what statistics suggested. Workforce empowerment improved every measurable outcome without bureaucratic overhead traditional regulation imposed. "Mr. Torres, Labor Department typically mediates conflicts between workers and management," she observed thoughtfully. "Your model renders mediation unnecessary by eliminating underlying antagonism. We're considering recommending tax incentives for companies achieving verified stakeholder democracy." Her suggestions sparked intense policy discussion. Government recognition could accelerate transformation adoption while potentially bureaucratizing authentic cultural evolution. We developed framework maintaining democratic purity while qualifying for potential incentives, mandatory profit sharing, protected whistleblowing channels, and transparent equity metrics. International delegation from German trade unions provided unexpected perspective. Their representative, Friedrich Müller, studied Atlantic intensively before sharing crucial insight. Workplace democracy succeeds differently across cultures. German system institutionalized works councils decades ago. American resistance suggests deeper cultural barrier requiring navigation. His observation prompted reflection about scaling challenges. Could distributed governance flourish within broader cultural context, prioritizing individualism over collective benefit? Atlantic's success emerged from crisis, generating unusual receptivity. Replication elsewhere required addressing cultural prerequisites more systematically. The Transformation Academy graduated its first cohort, 43 change agents from diverse organizations equipped with practical methodology rather than theoretical frameworks. Their companies reported immediate improvements, 15% average efficiency gains within 3 months, 30% reduction in unplanned turnover, quantifiable increases in customer satisfaction. Success stories particularly inspired from unlikely sectors. Municipal Water Department reduced emergency repairs 40% after workers redesigned maintenance protocols. Public library system increased circulation 25% when librarians collaborated directly on community needs assessment. Even prison facility implementing selective autonomy reduced incidents significantly. Yet transformation faced sophisticated opposition. Corporate consulting firm McKinsey released white paper questioning long-term sustainability of flat organizations, arguing that complexity eventually demands hierarchical restoration. Their research, funded by traditional management advocacy groups, generated media coverage, attempting to undermine worker democracy momentum. I responded through op-ed published simultaneously in Wall Street Journal and labor publications. McKinsey's arguments reveal fundamental misunderstanding. We don't advocate chaos masquerading as freedom. We create sophisticated coordination through distributed intelligence, exponentially more complex than simple command chains. Evolution proves distributed systems adapt more successfully than rigid hierarchies. The philosophical debate intensified as universities split between traditional business departments defending conventional wisdom and interdisciplinary programs embracing Atlantic's methodology. Harvard conducted comparative study tracking, matched pairs of similar companies, one transforming through worker participation, another maintaining traditional structure. 3-year preliminary results devastated hierarchical assumptions. Transformed. Companies outperformed traditionally managed peers by 34% across multiple financial metrics. More surprisingly, innovation patents increased 300% in democratized organizations. Creativity flourishing when workers felt genuine ownership rather than just employment. This academic validation coincided with unexpected political development. Senator Elizabeth Warren incorporated Atlantic's story into proposed American Workers' Democracy Act, legislation mandating minimum worker board representation for companies exceeding 1,000 employees. The bill generated passionate debate about federal role in corporate governance reform. During congressional hearings supporting legislation, I emphasized pragmatic focus. Senator Warren's bill shouldn't impose specific methodologies. Instead, it should establish transparency requirements, allowing stakeholders to choose structures aligning with their values and capabilities. Democracy shouldn't be mandated. It should be enabled. Pharmaceutical giant Merck approached quietly about confidential consultation. Their whistleblower revealed emerging fraud resembling Atlantic's earlier experience, executive manipulation of drug approval timelines for financial gain. Unlike previous crises, early intervention through worker-engaged oversight prevented catastrophic damage. Your methodology saved us from repeating Atlantic's nightmare, Merck's CEO admitted privately. Anonymous employee notifications flagged irregularities when traditional audit systems missed them completely. We're implementing full democratization before scandal breaks. His proactive response demonstrated transformation's preventative power beyond remediation. Meanwhile, Patricia Warner's parole hearing approached. Surprisingly, she requested my attendance not as victim, but as character witness. Prison correspondence had revealed genuine philosophical evolution. Michael, confinement ironically provided freedom to examine how authority addiction corrupted judgment. Your model isn't just efficient, it's inherently ethical because distributed. Power prevents individual corruption. Her insight suggested imprisonment occasionally generated understanding impossible during executive privilege. I testified honestly. Patricia's contrition seems authentic. Her historical knowledge of Atlantic could contribute meaningfully to prevent similar mistakes if channeled through proper supervision. Parole granted with requirement. Document corporate ethics, education for business programs. Olympic Games Selection Committee approached about consulting athlete village operations incorporating democratic principles. Traditional, hierarchical management of elite competitors frequently generated conflicts undermining performance. They sought sustainable harmony through stakeholder participation structures. The project challenged assumptions about excellence, requiring authoritarian direction. Athletes thrived when involved in decision-making about training schedules, facility improvements, and resource allocation. Team USA's experimental democratic approach outperformed traditional command structures measurably. Medal counts validated. Methodology transcending commercial applications. Transformation Academy's international expansion demanded addressing cultural variations systematically. Japanese companies struggled adapting American-style individual voice promotion. Solution emerged through synthesis, maintaining collective decision-making while amplifying traditionally quiet perspectives. Results proved cultural flexibility strengthened rather than weakened core principles. UK healthcare system adoption revealed unexpected healing power of democratic engagement. When nurses participated fully in hospital administration, patient outcomes improved simultaneously with staff satisfaction. Turnover reduction saved millions, while human dignity restoration proved priceless. Medical professionals discovered voice enhancement improved rather than replaced clinical hierarchy where expertise genuinely mattered. By autumn, Atlantic's market capitalization exceeded pre-crisis levels by 200%, silencing remaining critics questioning financial viability. Yet deeper satisfaction emerged from letters arriving daily from workers across industries, expressing gratitude for inspiration, proving sustainable alternatives existed. "Dear Mr. Torres," typically began, "your story gave me courage," suggesting workflow improvements previously dismissed. Management surprisingly listened when presented with evidence rather than complaints. Small victories accumulate. These individual triumphs represented revolution's true measure beyond corporate metrics. The Nobel Economics Committee officially announced Atlantic distribution as primary case study for reconsidering traditional economic assumptions about optimal organizational structure. Their research questioned whether Adam Smith's invisible and required visible democratization for contemporary applicability. Committee Chair Professor Henrik Larsson contacted personally. "Your transformation demonstrates that self-interest and collective benefit align naturally when structures eliminate artificial separation. We're fundamentally revisiting capitalism's philosophical foundations." His academic recognition transcended business achievement, suggesting contribution to human understanding's evolution. Presidential Economic Advisory Board requested comprehensive presentation about scaling distributed governance nationally. Chairwoman Janet Chen expressed remarkable openness. Traditional metrics showed GDP growth, but workers report increasing alienation. Atlantic suggests economic vitality and human fulfillment needn't trade off. Her insight revealed policymakers recognizing sustainability demanded integrated solutions. During White House East Room presentation, I emphasized accessible transformation. Revolutionary change doesn't require revolutionary upheaval. Small permissions accumulate into structural transformation. Every organization can begin tomorrow. Listen more, control less, trust intentionally. Simplicity carried power that technical complexity often obscured. Questions from presidential advisors revealed shifting paradigm. How does democratization affect international competitiveness, rather than can democracy survive competitive pressures? The framing evolution suggested tipping point approaching where worker participation became expected rather than experimental. Meanwhile, daughter Olivia completed graduate studies with thesis incorporating Atlantic's methodology into urban planning. City transformation mirrors corporate evolution. Resident participation generates sustainable solutions, top-down planning. Mrs. Consistently, her academic integration demonstrated transformation, influencing next generation's professional approaches naturally. The yearly performance review revealed quantifiable revolution. 2,800 employees now operated autonomously across 89 facilities in 34 states. Customer satisfaction maintained industry-leading 94%. Safety incidents approached statistical zero. Innovation suggestions averaged 43 per employee annually. Each metric validated philosophy's practical superiority conclusively. More profound metrics emerged through qualitative assessment. Workers described transformed self-perception. "I'm not just clock punching anymore. I'm solving real problems affecting thousands of customers daily." This psychological shift generated performance improvements no incentive system could manufacture artificially. Global Business Forum invited keynote about future of work in era recognizing artificial intelligence threat to traditional employment. My perspective emphasized complementary evolution. AI shouldn't replace human judgment, but enhance its scale. Democratized organizations adapt to technological change automatically because workers innovate solutions rather than resist displacement. Silicon Valley executives, initially dismissive of soft transformation methodology, began requesting private consultations. Tech industry's concentration of power in founder CEOs created vulnerability to authoritarian dysfunction. Even technologies, cutting edge, required democratic foundation for sustainable excellence. Pacific Innovation Conference showcased Atlantic's technological integration, where worker input guided AI implementation rather than imposing machine logic on human processes. Warehouse optimization algorithm developed through driver collaboration achieved 40% better results than consultant-designed alternatives. Human expertise enhanced rather than constrained machine capabilities. Federal Reserve Board study confirmed Transformers' macroeconomic implications. Regions where multiple businesses adopted democratic governance showed 8% higher employment stability, 2% stronger wage growth, and 15% reduced inequality compared to traditional management regions. Systemic benefits validated individual company improvements. International Labour Organization requested documentation for global best practices database. Nordic countries, already progressive in workplace democracy, studied Atlantic's crisis-driven acceleration for rapid transformation methodology where cultural predisposition existed. Dutch companies reported implementing modified versions, generating immediate excellence improvements. Educational transformation accelerated as universities worldwide incorporated Atlantic's casework into curriculum. Harvard Business School's updated case study From Crisis to Catalyst, the Torres transformation became required reading. Students arriving at workplace already expecting democratic participation predicted inevitable cultural shift. By winter, unexpected collaboration emerged with McKinsey itself. The consulting firm's junior partners, recognizing demographic shifts in corporate leadership preferences, approached about certification program for democratic transformation specialists. Their traditional hierarchy finally recognized market forces demanding authentic stakeholder engagement. Climate Change Summit invited Atlantic as corporate sustainability model, demonstrating environmental responsibility through worker-designed solutions. Employee-driven carbon reduction initiatives achieved zero emissions 6 years ahead of target without compromising operational efficiency. Grassroots innovation proved more effective than executive mandate for complex challenges. Standing before International Assembly, Carlos again surprised with eloquent testimony. Climate solutions require ground-level understanding. Drivers see waste patterns executives miss. Warehouse workers know efficiency opportunities studies overlook. We implemented 247 eco-improvements in 12 months. Democracy isn't just ethical, it's ecologically essential. His speech generated unprecedented standing ovation from environmental delegates, typically skeptical of corporate greenwashing. Authentic worker voices carried credibility beyond manufactured PR campaigns. Climate crisis demanded exactly the distributed intelligence our governance model cultivated naturally. Maria reflected during holiday gathering about transformation's personal dimension. You worried initially about whether termination would define legacy. Instead, liberation created legacy transcending single career. You're not warehouse supervisor any longer. You're movement catalyst whose influence multiplies generationally. Her perspective illuminated Journey's unexpected trajectory. Organizational revolution had generated personal evolution where silence Transformed into purposeful advocacy, observation converted to intentional leadership, and quiet strength became amplified voice for millions discovering their own dignity. New Year arrived with Atlantic preparing international expansion, testing cultural adaptability comprehensively. Brazilian logistics company requested partnership adapting democratic governance to Latin American context. Cultural consultants warned against direct replication, suggesting modification respecting regional hierarchical traditions. Challenge confirmed earlier insights about transformation requiring indigenous development rather than imported methodology. Brazilian workers embraced collaborative decision-making enthusiastically while maintaining respectful deference to experience and expertise. Synthesis rather than surrender characterized successful cultural integration. Unexpected vindication arrived through Patricia Warner's post-prison book announcement. Silent Witness: How One Employee's Documentation Exposed Corporate Corruption and Created New Management Model, acknowledged my role while accepting full responsibility for unethical leadership. Her academic collaboration with James explored broad psychology systematically. Their research revealed crucial insight. Executive isolation from operational reality created psychological conditions enabling ethical drift. Distance from consequence eliminated natural moral feedback loops present in face-to-face transactions. Democratic structures compressed psychological space between decision and impact preventatively. The manuscript's advanced chapters shared privately demonstrated genuine scholarship transcending self-justification. Torres' methodology succeeds because it eliminates artificial separation between privileged deciders and affected workers. Power remains accountable through proximity rather than requiring external regulation. Corporate publishing houses competed for rights while questioning manuscripts' potential, undermining traditional management consulting industries' fundamental assumptions. We encouraged publication proceeding, recognizing truth's inevitability once transformation demonstrated superior results consistently. Spring brought ceremonial occasion. Atlanta's groundbreaking for first purpose-built facility designed specifically around democratic governance principles. Worker input shaped every architectural element. No executive offices, flexible collaboration spaces replacing hierarchical footprints, transparent operation centers visible throughout facility. Architect Maria Santiago embraced challenge enthusiastically. Traditional corporate architecture enforces separation and surveillance. This building embodies openness and trust physically. Space itself communicates organizational values. Opening ceremony featured workers explaining design choices rather than executives giving speeches. Simultaneous facility represented symbolic milestone while generating renewed energy for movement's next phase. Built environment reflecting cultural transformation reinforced psychological reality that fundamental change had occurred irreversibly. Government Accountability Office published comprehensive study validating distributed governance's fraud prevention effectiveness. Their econometric analysis showed democratic companies experienced 78% fewer financial irregularities compared to traditional structures. Transparency and broad participation created natural immune systems against corruption. Senator Warren's Modified Workers' Democracy Act gained momentum with GAO validation, plus growing corporate support from transformed businesses. Opposition crumbled as even Wall Street recognized sustainable value creation required authentic stakeholder engagement rather than performative CSR initiatives. Legislative hearings featured compelling testimony from Lakeisha Williams, Atlantic's first democratically elected Chief Innovation Officer. Rising from administrative assistant through worker participation channels, she embodied transformation's practical meritocracy versus theoretical hierarchies. Traditional companies claim talent rises naturally, Lakeisha testified confidently, but artificial barriers prevent recognition. Democratic structures reveal hidden capabilities everyone possesses. I'm not exceptional. I'm typical worker, finally. Permitted contributing fully. The broader cultural impact manifested through generational shift. Graduating students increasingly prioritized workplace democracy when evaluating employers. Corporate recruiters reported talented candidates declining positions at traditionally managed companies despite higher salaries. Values alignment superseded compensation considerations for emerging workforce. Digital technology facilitated transformation acceleration through platforms enabling asynchronous democratic participation. Workers across shifts and locations contributed equitably to decision-making using tools designed specifically for inclusive governance. Technology finally served human values rather than replacing human connection. As Atlantic's 20th month of transformation concluded, operational excellence achieved new peaks while maintaining human-centered culture. The warehouse supervisor's quiet documentation had cascaded into movement reshaping corporate America's fundamental assumptions about optimal organizational design. Standing where termination notice had once represented ending, now symbolized headquarters for business renaissance, proving dignity didn't inhibit but enhanced performance. That trust multiplied rather than divided capability, and that sustainable. Prosperity required stakeholder partnership, transcending shareholder primacy. The quiet revolution succeeded because it aligned with, rather than resisted, fundamental human aspirations for meaningful contribution, equitable treatment, and collective flourishing. What began as personal vindication evolved into societal transformation, demonstrating that sometimes being forced outside systems provided necessary perspective for their complete reconstruction. Looking forward, conviction solidified that Atlantic's experience represented harbinger rather than anomaly. Corporate structures worldwide faced inevitable evolution toward authentic democracy as generational preferences, technological capabilities, and economic necessities converged around stakeholder capitalism, replacing extractive models. The warehouses maintained continuous operations as always, but energy flowed differently, from commitment rather than compliance, excellence rather than adequacy, innovation rather than routine. Workers arrived not to fulfill assignments, but to contribute improvements advancing shared mission. Maria's words resonated prophetically. You didn't get fired, you got liberated from constraints limiting your full contribution. The termination that once threatened identity had ultimately expanded it beyond individual achievement to collective elevation benefiting thousands. The transformation's legacy continued unfolding through ripple effects spanning industries, challenging academia, influencing legislation, and inspiring workers worldwide, discovering their voices mattered profoundly. Corporate governance revolution proceeded precisely because it unleashed rather than imposed, elevated rather than controlled, amplified rather than restricted. Atlantic distribution stood as living proof that business excellence didn't require human sacrifice, but rather demanded human flourishing, systematically designed through participatory structures. The warehouse supervisor's documented observations had crystallized into methodology, reshaping assumptions about sustainable competitive advantage. As evening settled over Charleston, facility lights illuminated purpose beyond mere commercial transaction. Each illuminated station represented workers empowered to shape organizational destiny previously reserved for distant executives. Democracy hadn't created chaos, but coordinated excellence through distributed responsibility. The quiet man who documented everything while appearing to see nothing had ultimately seen most clearly that systems serving human dignity naturally generated superior results, that power properly distributed amplified rather than diminished, and that revolution succeeded through strategic patience rather than impulsive destruction. Tomorrow would bring continued expansion as transformation principles adapted globally while maintaining essential truth that employee dignity drove organizational excellence naturally. Each successful implementation reinforced conviction that sustainable prosperity required authentic stakeholder partnership transcending traditional hierarchies. The warehouse supervisor's termination had terminated outdated assumptions about organizational performance, proving that sometimes dismissal provided opportunity for reforming rather than merely leaving systems that no longer served human or economic potential adequately. Standing at operations center monitoring facilities, humming with purposeful energy, I recognized journey's completion only marked beginning of broader movement toward workplace democracy. The quiet observer's documentation had accumulated into undeniable evidence that corporations flourished when structured around human dignity rather than hierarchical control. Atlantic's continuing revolution demonstrated that American capitalism could evolve beyond exploitation toward genuine stakeholder prosperity. Each successful quarter validated worker-centric operations while inspiring others to question inherited assumptions about optimal organizational design. The transformation succeeded because it proved rather than proclaimed, demonstrated rather than declared, achieved excellence through empowerment rather than maintenance of artificial limitations. Trust had generated returns exceeding any control. Systems' theoretical projections. As Charleston prepared for tomorrow's challenges, the warehouse's continued operations carrying transformation's message across nations' logistics networks. Each package delivered represented small victory proving human dignity enhanced rather than inhibited business performance. The quiet warehouse supervisor's story transcended personal vindication, becoming inspiration for millions discovering. Their operational knowledge contained seeds of excellence long suppressed by hierarchical assumptions. Revolution proceeded through enlightened self-interest as democratic companies outperformed traditional competitors conclusively. Standing where Patricia Warner once commanded through fear, I monitored systems flowing with voluntary coordination, impossible to mandate. The executive suite had transformed from seat of authority to platform for amplifying workforce wisdom previously dismissed. Tomorrow's sunshine would illuminate facilities where workers arrived as partners rather than subordinates, contributing innovations exceeding management theory's predictive capacity. Cultural transformation had embedded deeply enough to survive. Individual leadership transitions, democracy's ultimate validation. Atlantic distribution exemplified simple truth repeatedly validated. Organizations maximizing human potential achieved excellence naturally, sustainably, and profitably. The terminated supervisor's patience had proven more powerful than executives' haste, observation more valuable than assumption, documentation more durable than manipulation. The revolution continued advancing through inspired emulation rather than forced compliance. Change agents emerged from warehouse floors, factories, offices, and service centers nationwide as workers recognized inherent power residing in collective intelligence properly channeled. Looking forward, the movement's momentum suggested inevitable tipping point, approaching where stakeholder democracy became standard practice rather than innovative exception. Corporate America faced choice between evolution toward sustainable excellence or obsolescence through persistent extraction models. The warehouses hummed continuously through Charleston night, representing infinite possibility when human contribution aligned with organizational mission authentically. Power flowed freely rather than accumulated exclusively, creating exponential rather than incremental improvements. As transformation's narrative continued, writing itself through daily operations exceeding expectations, the quiet supervisor's termination had paradoxically amplified influence beyond any position's formal boundaries. Truth resonated wherever workers recognized dignity's connection to performance excellence. The story inspired because it demonstrated that sometimes endings represented disguised beginnings, that silence accumulated into undeniable testimony, and that individual courage catalyzed systemic reformation, transcending personal achievement. Corporate governance revolution succeeded through awakening rather than imposition. Standing at facility entrance where 15 years of loyal service had ended abruptly, I recognized that termination had ultimately liberated knowledge required for broader transformation. The warehouses no longer represented limitation, but launching platforms for movement reshaping American workplace culture. Worker dignity driving business excellence validated humanity's deepest aspirations while achieving capitalism's highest ambitions. The quiet revolution proved most transformative precisely because it aligned profit with purpose, efficiency with empathy, and success with shared prosperity. Tomorrow's operations would continue demonstrating that sustainable competitive advantage emerged naturally when organizations treated workers as essential partners rather than expendable resources. Each successful delivery reinforced methodology's superiority convincingly. The transformation journey illustrated that sometimes greatest contributions emerged from unexpected sources, that quiet observation accumulated wisdom invisible to hierarchies, rushed judgments, and that authentic revolutions succeeded through patient documentation rather than passionate destruction. Atlantic's evolution represented capitalism's potential transcendence from extractive systems to regenerative partnerships, benefiting all stakeholders sustainably. The terminated warehouse supervisor had discovered purpose exceeding individual vindication, catalyst for widespread organizational democracy. As night deepened over Charleston's transformed logistics hub, conviction solidified that change persisted. Because workers owned solutions emerging from their participation rather than mandates descending from isolated executives. Democracy flourished when planted rather than proclaimed. The quiet man's strategic silence had ultimately spoken louder than any shouted protest, proving that sometimes dismissal provided necessary distance for comprehensive perspective reform. Organizational excellence required human elevation systematically, designed rather than accidentally discovered. Looking toward future challenges and opportunities, the revolution's fundamental principle remained constant. Power properly distributed amplified capability exponentially, while concentrated authority invariably constrained potential despite theoretical justifications. The warehouses continued operations as testaments to transformative possibility when human dignity guided corporate architecture. Workers moved with purpose transcending employment toward meaningful contribution, shaping organizational destiny. Directly, Maria's final wisdom echoed truth. You weren't terminated. You were transplanted to ground where influence could spread more widely. The termination notice had ultimately expanded rather than concluded career impact beyond imagining. Standing where crisis had once threatened everything, now represented headquarters for movement, proving that authentic stakeholder democracy generated sustainable prosperity naturally. The quiet supervisor's documentation had accumulated into methodology, reshaping fundamental business assumptions globally. The revolution succeeded because it proved rather than proclaimed, demonstrated excellence through empowerment rather than control, and achieved sustainable results through human dignity's systematic integration into corporate governance. As transformation's influence continued spreading across American workplace culture, Conviction deepened that change's source ultimately mattered less than its authentic alignment with human values and economic realities, demanding stakeholder partnership. Over hierarchy's artificial limitations, the future remained unwritten, yet promising, as revolution advanced one enlightened organization at a time, one empowered worker at a time, one realized potential at a time toward inevitable evolution of capitalism's structures serving humanity's highest aspirations through democratic distribution of economic power. In the end, the quiet warehouse supervisor's greatest achievement lay not in corporate revenge, but in demonstrating conclusively that business excellence flows naturally from human dignity when organizations choose elevation over exploitation, partnership over patriarchy, and shared prosperity over concentrated privilege. The revolution continues, one transformed workplace at a time, proving that sometimes quiet observation accumulates into unstoppable momentum for fundamental systemic change. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Respect, genuine partnership, and the joy of shared creation. Vivian's condition had stabilized at a plateau where she retained essential personality while losing detailed memories. Her room faced the valley, its windows offering the panoramic view she'd first admired when proposing their unusual alliance. Though she often forgot what she'd eaten for breakfast, she never forgot the land's significance. Each evening, Jacob would join her at the window, describing the day's activities as if narrating an ongoing story. The wheat's higher than last year. Sarah's seedling experiment produced 30% more yield. Eleanor took her first unassisted steps today, the sunset's painting everything gold. Sometimes Vivian would respond coherently. Often she'd just squeeze his hand. Always, she'd smile at the word Eleanor, whether referencing the baby or the ancestor whose choices had set everything in motion. On the final day of the year, Jacob discovered Vivian had written, with tremendous effort, a single sentence in her journal, found what was lost by losing what was held too tight. The wisdom pierce him. By surrendering pride, he'd gained purpose. By accepting unconventional salvation, he'd created conventional success. By allowing the past to be healed rather than preserved unchanged, he'd secured a future worth inheriting. Circle Bar Ranch no longer merely endured. It flourished as a beacon of what became possible when communities chose collaboration over competition, innovation over inertia, possibility over preservation of problems. As fireworks exploded over the valley celebrating the new year, Jacob understood their journey continued. Vivian's legacy would extend far beyond her lifetime through the systems they'd created. The Institute would train thousands who would train millions. Regenerative practices would spread like beneficial mycelium through soil, connecting and strengthening the entire agricultural ecosystem. The railroad heiress who had crossed a continent to heal an old wound had catalyzed healing far beyond. Family feuds. She demonstrated how wealth could be transformed into wisdom, how personal redemption could scale to global transformation, how one ranch's salvation could illuminate pathways for sustainable prosperity everywhere land met human aspiration. Looking out over everything they'd built together, Jacob finally understood Eleanor's choice completely. She hadn't chosen between two men, she'd chosen between two futures. One built on displacement and extraction, the other rooted in regeneration and relationships. Her choice had preserved the possibility that one day her descendants and her rejected suitors' descendants might collaborate rather than compete. That possibility had manifested through the most unlikely vehicle, a marriage of convenience that became a partnership of purpose. The future stretched ahead, uncertain as always, but approached now with confidence born of demonstrated possibility. They had shown that when tradition danced with innovation, when competition transformed into cooperation, when ancient wisdom merged with cutting-edge science. Then communities didn't merely survive challenges, they created solutions that transcended them entirely. The story of Circle Bar Ranch would continue, chapter after chapter, each generation adding its own innovations while honoring the essential truth. The land endures not through resistance to change, but through intelligent adaptation. Like the prairie grasses that survived drought by growing roots 10 feet deep while leaving graceful stalks to bend with wind, successful legacy required both anchoring in fundamental values and flexible response to changing conditions. As the new year dawned over the Sweetwater Valley, Jacob knew their most significant achievement wasn't any single innovation or institution. It was proving that crisis could catalyze transformation, that unlikely partnerships could yield extraordinary results, and that the future of agriculture, indeed, the future of human survival on Earth, depended on rediscovering the wisdom that regeneration, not extraction, was the truest path to enduring prosperity. The Preston Hartley story had completed its first arc from conflict to collaboration. Now it would begin countless new chapters through every person it touched, every practice it spread, every life it improved. Vivian's dementia might eventually erase the details of what they'd accomplished, but the accomplishment itself would resonate through generations, proof that love for the land, properly expressed through thoughtful action, could indeed change the world. In the end, they had done more than save a single ranch. They had helped save a way of thinking that humanity desperately needed, one rooted in regeneration, guided by wisdom both ancient and emerging, and proven through the simple but profound act of caring for the earth as carefully as the earth had always cared for those who inhabited it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.